We could kind of start off this morning by grounding our audience in all things Peacock, your positioning, how you guys position to the consumer, and then where it fits in kind of the general universe of NBC.
Sure. I think Peacock came 10, 12 years after Hulu did, after Netflix did, so a little bit later to the market than a lot of our competitors. And I think we were often experimenting at first, like, hey, let's create big budget originals, let's do library. We had access to the Universal TV library, including The Office and Parks and Rec, and others that really helped boost our service. We got lucky with Yellowstone. That was one deal that probably wouldn't be done anymore from Paramount, but at the time it was a good deal for us and a good deal for them, and maybe it's turned out for a better deal for NBC at this point. But sports really has been a key differentiator for us. Again, a lot of the historical competitors, Hulu, Netflix, they don't really do live, or at least live sports. I know Netflix is starting to get into live comedy sets, but live sports has always been a differentiator for us. And really, a lot of kudos goes to the Premier League. They were always willing to experiment with us. They put their rights into our package. They were willing to move on opening day, or at least our opening day, to Peacock. So we had Liverpool and Arsenal and whatnot back in July 15th, 2020. And so sports has been a key differentiator for us. It's an advertising driver. Advertisers want to be around it. It sort of anchors a lot of the advertising buys. So it's been a good thing for Peacock.
So sports has been a key element since day one. But you guys have been live in market now for several years. You guys have obviously invested a lot in live sports rights beyond the Premier League.
Yep.
What's that catalog look like? What's that portfolio of rights look like today?
We simulcast all of NBC, so that means Sunday Night Football, the Olympics are on Peacock, PGA Tour each and every weekend. We simulcast all of Golf Channel on Peacock, so that's a wealth of content that exists there already. We have 180 exclusive Premier League games. We have 19 exclusive baseball games in the morning on Peacock. The WWE Network, again, credit to Nick Khan and that team for doing a deal with us when we were very early on and believing in us. And that deal has been a great deal, I think, for both parties. So we'll have WrestleMania coming up in about a month or so. So a lot of exclusive content, and that really has driven our platform. I mean, again, it's one thing to have a new original show that you have to explain what it is, why someone should basically sign up for Peacock and watch it, like what's it about, versus having a Man City Arsenal game, and that fan base just will go anywhere to go and see it.
So talk about that for a little bit. So with the WWE, you talked about them taking a risk early on. When you think about Peacock as a destination for general entertainment, servicing lots of different consumers across the marketplace, what was the value proposition? What was part of the pitch to the WWE on why they were a good fit for Peacock and why Peacock was a good fit for the WWE?
Yeah, I think it speaks for all over sports that the sports want to be around other entertainment content. So part of our pitch to WWE or our pitch to anywhere else we're trying to acquire rights is you'll be next to the Universal Film Library. You'll be next to Fast and the Furious when it's 45 days post-theatrical run. You'll be next to the Minions. You'll be next to The Office, Yellowstone. And so we're trying to grow the sport when they're on Peacock as opposed to, back in the day we had NBC Sports Gold. That was just for the hardcore fans. You're not really expanding the audience. But we've seen, especially on WWE that we had a couple of years from now, is that the audience that they had on the WWE Network and what we had the first year has grown significantly. And I think part of it is people come in on a Sunday night and say, what's on TV, what's on Peacock, and there it is right in the 1A position on the homepage. And so you get a little bit of sort of more casual people checking it out, just like you have on broadcast TV. Right.
So from an audience standpoint, live sports is benefiting the Peacock platform, but Peacock is also benefiting most of those sports through Discovery, effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when you think about where you go next in sports, obviously you guys are looking at lots of different rights. You guys announced the Big Ten is a new partnership this year. Maybe you could talk about the significance of that deal,
Sure.
What it means to the platform, and kind of why you went down that path.
Well, look, there's no sort of mystery that college football is probably the second biggest sport in America, and the Big Ten, is a conference that has some of the biggest teams. And being able to have fill our linear sort of windows, having prime time NBC 15 or 14 weeks a year, then have Sunday Night Football, it gives a sort of a power punch in the fall, we think, overall. But as part of that deal, we're able to leverage those broadcast windows to drive some content to Peacock. So Peacock will have 9 exclusive football games this coming year. And they're not just the worst games, Indiana versus Indiana State. They're going to be Michigan and Ohio State and some of the, the bigger clubs or bigger teams, schools will be on Peacock. And we hope, again, you're hitting a new sort of TAM, a whole new fan base that we can convert into Peacock subscribers.
So that's a really good thing to expand on too. So when you think about like what you're covering on Peacock versus what you cover on linear and the broader NBC ecosystem, like what goes into those decisions, and how does like the whole pie grow between having access to both sides of the equation?
Yeah, I think it's less complicated than people think it is. Right. Honestly, like the Premier League, every week we're deciding, hey, there's a 10-game slate. Where do 5 games on Peacock go? Which games go on NBC? What games go on USA? Part of it's the windows. Like there's only one game at noon, so that obviously has to go on NBC. So that's a pretty easy decision. Then we kind of look at how many appearances did a club make? How long has it been since the last time they've been on Peacock? So Man U has been on 35 days. We'll make a concerted effort to get them on the platform so the Man U fan base doesn't churn out.
Got it. And how are you, like, when you're making those decisions about different rights to bring onto the platform, how are you considering the different monetization models and tiers of offerings that you've got for consumers? You've obviously got the ad-supported business, you've got the subscription business, you've got hybrid models. How do you think about optimizing different programming and different content for those different business models?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have just 2 tiers. The free tier has kind of been sunsetted,
right.
And so now it's just the $4.99 tier and the $9.99 tier. However, with sports, and we haven't got any complaints about this, you still get ads in the $9.99 tier. So the ARPU for the $9.99 tier is north of $10, which is pretty significant.
What's that ad load actually look like in the Premier tier?
You have 5 minutes an hour on the $4.99 tier,
right.
0 minutes an hour for entertainment content,
okay.
And then it's static, dependent upon the sport. So NFL is a pretty significant ad load, as we all know. That is the same as you see on TV. Whistle blows, we run commercials. For other sports like Premier League, there's less ad load, but we don't really necessarily change it based upon ad tier.
Got it. But that's definitely a fact when you're thinking about like the value of these different rights.
For sure.
You're obviously thinking about that.
Yeah, when you look at rights, how we value is there's direct economics against a sub. Like how many new subs will come into the platform and they will view this sport. They came there for that sport. They're now on the Peacock platform for it. How long will they stay for? And so you sort of factor that in. So $5 times however many months they're going to average stay for. And certain subsets of people are more valuable than others. It's interesting to a degree that lower income cohorts actually have less streaming options. They actually stream more content when they're on a streaming service. We sort of found that out a little bit. We also look at the advertising revenue against those cohorts. Like, again, you're going to stick on Peacock. How long are you going to stay and watch the NFL or Big Ten football? Then you get into Halo. How many people are going to watch The Office and Yellowstone and everything else? And how do you sort of factor that into your model? So in a weird way, you can make more money off a sporting event than just the direct economics into that sporting event. Sort of how broadcast TV, existed way back in the day.
Yeah, and you're obviously you talked about the crossover between general entertainment, content discovery, and bringing casual fans into sports. How much crossover are you seeing between different sports programming in itself? Is that more or less, or are you seeing that just in the same way with kind of your general entertainment programming?
Yeah, I mean, sports fans watch other sports. There's no mystery behind that. I mean, the key for us, again, is to convert them into entertainment viewers, because entertainment is sticky. Entertainment's happening Monday through Friday when we may not have a live event on. And kind of how I view, our sort of sports acquisitions, that we probably don't need another soccer league. If you're a soccer fan worth your salt, you're probably a fan of the Premier League. And so we'll say, okay, what are those concentric circles that don't cross over in terms of the fan base? We know there's 50 million households in America that watch 100 hours or more of sports content on TV, on linear TV today. But you look at what the breakup of those 50 million households, certainly the NFL is a big portion of that, but you have these little pockets that you uniquely can grab them and bring them into the ecosystem if you have the right rights.
Got it. And so we're talking a lot about obviously the business of sports, but talk to me about the consumer side of it. Like how does the consumer really view Peacock, and what's unique about Peacock in the eyes of the consumer from a sports viewership standpoint?
Well, one, I think our price point is fairly low, so it's a pretty good bargain. You look at WWE, it was at $9.99 a month before we licensed it, and we then pushed it out there at $4.99 a month, so half the price. You're getting 185 plus NBC games, so call it over 200 Premier League games for $5 a month. Pretty good value right there, first and foremost. But I do think we're sort of in this gradual sort of process where we go from, hey, we're a great place for the WWE fan, we're a great place for the Premier League fan, we're a great place for the Big Ten football fan, to being a great place for the sports fan. And I feel like as you accumulate rights and you kind of get to some sort of threshold, and again, I think it's arbitrary and different people will say, different thresholds, but there's enough sports on Peacock where I may not be the biggest Premier League fan or the biggest WWE fan, but I feel like there's enough there that I need to have it. And so I think that's kind of where we're trying to head to.
Got it. And are you thinking about how does the viewing experience really evolve on your platform? Are you guys trying new things, considering obviously this is a pure OTT platform? You have lots of other possibilities available to you. Like, how are you thinking about innovating the viewing experience versus what traditional platforms offer?
Yeah, we have something on Premier League where you have the highlights available to you. So you scroll along the bar at the below with your remote control and can see the highlights from before. You can scroll back and see the entire game if you want to. We have something called Watch With, we're experimenting with, where you can actually, with a talent, with whoever else. It's kind of like the Manning cast, but it's more from a technological product delivery standpoint. You can do that. I worry a lot about investing a ton of money about sports programming. One, our producers are the best in the business. They don't leave a hell of a lot on the cutting room floor. Second is that we're all watching sports with our iPhone in our hand, where there's a great, sort of second screen right there. So I don't know if I would invest a ton of money against that on the TV screen.
Do you think about that? Do you think about what your second screen experience is while you're watching people?
I know what I do personally is I text my friends. You're on Twitter looking at what people are talking about, and you're checking scores and whatever else. There's a huge highlight. You might go to and find it online.
Right, and that community aspect, that's a part of how you guys are thinking about driving audience on the platform.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, the communities is sports, and having communities talk about the sport and ultimately sign up for Peacock is sort of our goal.
Right. So you've been at this now for a few years. I mean, what would you say has been like the most surprising element for you in terms of your sports programming on the platform? Like, I know you said it was there from the beginning. But has it grown faster than you expected? Has it played a bigger role on the platform in driving audience, a bigger differentiator?
I think it's played a bigger role overall than we expected initially. I mean, there was some conversation early on: do we separate sports out, like others have separated sports out, or we put it into one bundle? And again, I think we made the right decision when we look back at that. And again, I think the key learning was really like it's not this transactional business, right? People aren't just coming in for Premier League, watching on Saturday, and then vanishing until the next. Their favorite teams appearing on Peacock. They are sticking around. Like, it is that sort of milk in the back of the grocery store, so to speak, where people come in for the sport, but they're passing all these various tiles and other programs and more susceptible, hopefully, to our advertising of new shows coming out. And we just see it. We see people sort of branching out and discovering other content.
Got it. And what about, obviously, like we're talking a lot about live sports rights and how that's the primary driver for, so much of the business. But how do you think about ancillary original programming in the sports space? I know you guys carry a bunch of daily sports programming. Yep. Maybe you could talk about that slate and the role that plays in the overall mix that you guys are investing in.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. We have an NBC Sports channel, 24/7 channel. Dan Patrick from 9 to 12 is live on it each day. He's kind of the anchor. Matthew Berry, who I worked with way back in the Roto-World days, with Rick Wolf, who's probably here somewhere. That's great on the fantasy angle. We have Brother from Another with Michael Smith and Michael Hawley. And so it's a full, sort of slate. And again, you don't need enormous audiences on those content, but if you're watching it for 3 hours a day while you're working and you're running a certain amount of ads against it, it can be a profitable endeavor.
So do you find that also has the same crossover appeal that your live programming has?
For sure. It all bridges together. It is all interconnected.
Got it. So obviously we're super early into 2023. As you think about this year going into next year, like what's on your mind for the platform? Like, where do you guys go next?
I mean, look, the Big Ten launch is probably the biggest thing ahead of us. We put a lot of money on the table to get that property, and made some projections against it that we have to hit. So I think there's a lot of effort going around making sure people are aware that we have it on Saturday nights and also on Peacock. We're also not that distant from Paris in 24. It sounds like it's far off, but for us, not really.
Around the corner, really.
Yeah, around the corner. How do we look at the Olympics coming through to COVID late in the Olympics, and how do we change things up and make things a little bit different for the Paris Olympics? So we're kind of going through that, but those are probably the biggest things on my mind. Those
are the big ones. And then, how do you, like when you think about, I guess, from a programming standpoint, like the Olympics, obviously, tentpole event, right? Big Ten is kind of, obviously significant content, but different from a programming standpoint. How do you think about the event programming? Like you mentioned WrestleMania too. Yep. Like how do you, from a marketing standpoint, in terms of your messaging of this being available on Peacock, how does that change versus, your more general sports rights deals?
I mean, I think there's added sort of pressure to make it work, and we utilize all the platforms of NBC Universal. So for WrestleMania, you'll see superstars appearing on Today's Show. You'll see a superstar on Jimmy Fallon. We'll have Access Hollywood, and we kind of run through the car wash across the board. And we have something called Symphony at NBC Universal, which Steve Burke, our former CEO, kind of invented. And it's really just everyone sort of rowing in the same direction to sort of coalesce around one event or one show. And we kind of get that for the Peacock shows.
Got it. And you guys are working in lockstep with your partners on
100%.
that, right? That's like a cohesive, coordinated effort where you guys are really working to figure out that audience development plan.
100%. It's all hand in hand with WWE in that instance you mentioned.
Right. So part of your platform, their team, and you guys work to kind of maximize that experience.
I mean, you need the talent to buy in at the end of the day, and they're the ones that control the talent.
And that's really what drives the interest, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Right. So in terms of kind of next moves for you guys, I mean, obviously after the Big Ten, what comes after that?
I mean, the rights calendar is completely public, so there's certainly, big rights that are out there and small rights that are out there. There's some renewals that obviously are coming up. I would hate to throw out random names and get, me in trouble in the press, but
no commitments?
No commitments at all. But look, at the end of the day, we're NBC Universal, Comcast, we look at everything. There's a deck somewhere that says, okay, we believe this is what this is worth to us, and everything is price value. Right? If there's a value that we can get out of it for the right price, we will take a hard look at it and see if we can fit it into our portfolio.
Got it. And obviously you guys are a U.S.-based platform, but how do you guys think about the rest of the world, international markets? Are there aspirations for that for Peacock?
Yeah, I mean, Comcast owns Sky, so
right.
Obviously we're pretty in depth into Western Europe right now. There are certain other partnerships we have with Paramount and the Nordics called Sky Showtime. There are other sort of deals we have in various territories, and there's a whole team that's kind of working on all that.
Right. So when you guys are making your rights decisions now, that's top of mind for you as well.
Sports are really hard to separate rights. Mostly the sports rights holders can get more value by having a local auction because there's still local markets. If you're in a particular country in Europe, I mean even us in Sky for that matter, we haven't done many deals that are across both Sky and NBC just because there's more competition in the UK market, versus the other UK broadcasters, and the same thing in the US market. Got it.
And one other question on kind of as you think about your sports portfolio, I mean, is there a place for smaller niche sports on the platform? I mean, how do you see Peacock playing a role in terms of a partner that can really drive audience for some niche sports?
To my previous comment, it's really price value. So we have plenty of smaller sports. I'm trying to think. Michaela Schifrin set the World Cup record last week. That was on Peacock Live.
Yep.
Small fist skiing event was there. So a lot of Olympic sports are on Peacock that we have those relationships with. Rugby World Cup is a big sport if you're into it, and a small sport if you're not. So there's some of those that are out there that we have on our platform. Supercross has been an awesome partner. And again, there's a pretty decent cohort that loves that sport, and they're hardcore Peacock subscribers.
Right, and they're passionate for it.
Completely.
Right. Anything, Rick, I haven't asked you about Peacock? Anything you want the audience to know? I feel like I've rolled through my questions here.
No, I mean, I think when I look at NBC Universal overall, I really do feel this. I tell this to the team that we're advantage in this sort of new market that we're in. Broadcast TV, to a certain degree, has a renaissance right now. As cable continues to erode a little bit, we haven't been investing in cable. We've been putting more content on broadcast TV, so those windows become more valuable. And you can leverage those windows to drive back to Peacock and get content on the Peacock platform. So I feel pretty good with the hand that we have right now.
Cool. We got some questions from the audience here. I'll read a few off here. What are some of the best ways to merchandise live sports content on CTV platforms? Roku recently launched a sports tab and further updated their UI recently.
Well, first you spend money to get the good placement far in advance. That's one way to make it work, and we certainly will do that. But it's again, a little bit of this is a symbiotic relationship you have with those companies, whether it be Roku or Amazon Fire or Apple TV. They want to showcase the best sporting events, the best live events to their users, and if you have it, you're going to get disproportionately elevated, versus maybe other types of content.
Right. Do you believe the UK Saturday 15-minute football blackout will be broken?
Yeah, that's a 3 o'clock window. I luckily, because I'm domestic only, don't have to worry about that whatsoever.
Right.
So I'm kind of blissfully unaware of all the pain that the UK audience feels against Premier League.
How important is it to have robust highlights and replays on Peacock from your live sporting events to serve an audience that's not watching the events live?
I think we see replays, traffic for those European sports that start early, so a 7 a.m. Premier League game or a random skiing event that happens somewhere in the Alps, and people on the West Coast are sleeping when it's live. But there is some replay that happens there. But beyond that, we don't see a lot if it's just an average 1 o'clock game or something in the afternoon.
Are you guys pushing highlights socially as well?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So, and is that from, I should know this, but I apologize, I don't. Is that from a general Peacock perspective, or do you guys break out your kind of sports social handles and program that separate?
Sports is all about highlights, pushing them out, like
Yep.
25 a day if we have the content. Peacock will push out some of the top ones to try and drive more of a casual audience into the platform.
So multiple kind of approaches,
Correct.
multiple handles for that.
Yep.
Got it. Will NBC be back in for the NBA?
I think I read an article about that a few weeks ago. I don't know. Look, again, I'll go back to my previous comment. Like, we look at everything. I have no idea if we'll have a deal with the NBA or not, and I'm not sure if we'll get out of the ENP window. So
Right.
We'll see.
Right. Okay. How do you work towards keeping live sports live on streaming platforms and not allowing the offering to be too delayed by latency?
So we're about 20 seconds off, made improvements from about 45. There's always a trade-off you make with latency and stability, and obviously ad delivery. You factor all these things. I mean, the internet's a pretty inhospitable place for live streaming, and so you're trying to factor all that in, how much risk you're willing to take. And so for a Super Bowl, if you're in the millions of concurrence, probably want to take less risk, and so you add a little bit more latency. For a smaller event with less concurrence, you're willing to do a bit more. It's slowly getting better all the time. There's always, this is where it's a little bit of a dirty secret. Your cable box has latency, right? If you're in the stadium, you might be 7 seconds ahead of cable.
Right.
If there's the swear buzzer, like, you have a little bit of latency there too. So I think I don't know if it's as big a problem as people say it is, especially now, like, versus before. But I do understand if you're watching through cable and some of the vMVPDs are 45 seconds behind, you're seeing touchdown on your Twitter feed before the play is even going off.
Right. Can you keep an EPL-focused subscriber engaged during the off-season?
Yeah, we haven't seen, EPL, we have not seen a ton of churn. The season's over in mid-May. People come back in mid-August. The demographic tends to be more affluent than other demographics.
Does the usage stay constant, though? Do you see that?
No, you'll have obviously there's no new Premier League content hitting the platform. But again, like I said, people watch entertainment content. So we have enough content out there where it's not just a sports platform that you may see an elevated churn. We're pushing out, 10,000 hours of entertainment content at them.
Right. So the trick is how do you between seasons, how do you keep them engaged during that time and push the right type of content to them in between those moments?
Exactly.
Right. Got it. Regarding EPL, how much and in what ways does the U.S. business benefit from sister company Sky being the league's principal domestic broadcaster?
Well, Sky picks the windows, so that's helpful for us as we're looking at our own NBC schedule. So domestically in the UK, Sky, BT, others all pick the windows. We have some influence because we're very close to the Sky sports guys, so that's helpful. Oftentimes you can take talent, you take feeds, you take highlight packages from them. We used to run the Sky Sports program on NBCSN back in the day. So there's definitely some synergies there, but maybe not enormous synergies.
How important is fantasy sports integration to NBC Sports and Peacock for sports other than the NFL?
NFL and fantasy and overall sports gaming drives a lot of economics for us, certainly. That's why we hired Matthew Berry last summer and had him on Football Night in America. Fantasy sports beyond that, we don't have many sports like baseball has sort of at least in my mind, I used to play it all the time. I don't play it anymore. Has sort of faded away a little bit from fantasy. And I'm trying to think of any other sports that we have that really cater to fantasy, and I can't think of it at the top of my head.
How do you balance cost versus quality with remote broadcasts? As an announcer, remotes are much harder, and the broadcast seems to suffer with off-site announcers.
A little bit out of my swim lane on that one. I don't do the production side of it, but I know that they have been doing amazing things during COVID, and that taught them a lot of lessons that things could be done remotely, and I think you've seen that amongst all the broadcasters pulling back more from on-site and saving the cost.
Yeah. What are some sports strategies you're pursuing to further grow viewership of MLB on Sundays on Peacock?
Yeah, I mean, with the MLB deal was interesting. We were trying to find something unique about it because obviously there's plenty of MLB games out there, but having the 11:30 window and pushing back the 1 o'clock game to 1:30 created 2-hour exclusivity. And so we saw basically every morning about a 10 to 15% of the audience was the same audience from the previous week. So it's kind of a national baseball audience that I think we would not have if we ran those games at the same time RSNs were also running games. So that was one interesting thing that we kind of learned last year. Also, the gambling handle was higher for that game because it's the first game of the day, and it's right at the very top of FanDuel and DraftKings. So there's some advantage of that scheduling as well.
Do you hear, is that like a challenge you get from consumers? Do you hear about Discovery a lot? Is that a pain point for them that they come to you on?
I mean, we hear about it sometimes, or people will say it's not there, but they eventually get there. Like, it's like sometimes you see it on Twitter. I can't find the Premier League game. I'll turn on Peacock and I'll see it like right in the 1A position. Or if they came in half an hour early, it was on the front page of the sports section. So, and search works too. Like, search is right there.
Right.
I think where it gets more difficult when you get to an event like the Olympics, like, hey, when is Caleb Dressel racing for a gold medal? And like, how do you find the metadata to match up perfectly with your search data to say, okay, he's racing at 4:10 in the afternoon, which may get pushed back if the other races go long. That's more difficult. But for the bigger events, the bigger like just matches and games that we have, I don't think there's a huge searching.
Right, people, if they really want it, if they're really looking for it, they can find it.
Not even if they're really like, if they'll bump into it.
Right. Okay, I think that was it.
Awesome.
Rick,
Great.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.